Imagine surviving the apocalypse, convincing the strongest man in the world to spare your life, and then getting thrown straight into the mouth of a giant sea monster. Most people would have died immediately. Kim Dokja looked at the situation and thought, perfect, this is exactly what I needed. Because while everyone else was trying to survive the story, Kim Dokja was the only person who had already read it. And today, he was about to do something nobody in the original novel had ever done. He was going to make a deal with the Dokkaebi. The last thing Kim Dokcha saw before the world disappeared was Yoo Joonghyuk's face. The protagonist had listened to him. He had accepted him as a companion. He had even believed his lie that he was a prophet. Then he threw him into the ocean, straight into the waiting jaws of a giant sea serpent. The moment Dokja hit the water, the monster swallowed him whole. No hesitation, no warning, just darkness. If anyone else had been there, they would have assumed Kim Dokja was dead. Honestly, most readers would have assumed the same thing. But Dokja already knew something important. Yoo Jonghyuk wasn't trying to kill him. Not exactly. This was a test. A cruel one. A ridiculous one. The kind of test only Yoo Jonghyuk would come up with. Because in Yoo Jonghyuk's world, companions weren't people. They were tools, assets, weapons. And if Kim Dokja wanted to stand beside him, then he needed to prove he could survive impossible situations. Unfortunately, Yoo Jong-hyuk had chosen one of the most miserable survival tests imaginable: the inside of a sea serpent. This is episode 2 of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Welcome to Otaku Tea Time, where we spill the tea on manga, manhwa, and webtoon stories. If you don't want to read hundreds of chapters, don't worry, I got you. Grab your tea, sit back, and let's get into the story. When Dokja regained consciousness, he found himself floating inside the monster's stomach. It smelled horrible. Dead bodies drifted around him, bones floated through thick digestive fluids. The darkness was almost complete. For a moment, he couldn't help but laugh. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have screamed. Kim Dokcha started calculating. The story had already told him exactly how the sea serpent worked. Their stomach acid didn't activate immediately. There was a short delay, a grace period, which meant he still had time. Not much, but enough, as long as he stayed calm. A message appeared. Scenario failed. Penalty applied. Coins deducted. Dokja stared at the screen. Then he smiled, because something felt strange. The scenario failure message didn't say death. It showed question marks instead. The tiny detail changed everything. In 3 ways to survive the apocalypse, question marks meant uncertainty, and uncertainty meant negotiation. The moment he realized that, he knew exactly who would appear next. Bihyung. The Dokkaebi appeared looking incredibly pleased with himself. From Bihyung's perspective, this was peak entertainment. The weird human who kept surprising everyone had finally gotten himself eaten. The constellations were probably having a great time watching. Unfortunately for Bihyung, Kim Dokja knew exactly how the KBs thought. He knew their weaknesses. He knew their ambitions. And most importantly, he knew Bihyung's dream. Bihyung demanded payment, 5,000 coins. Pay the fee and survive. Refuse and die. Simple. At least that was what Bihyung expected. Instead, Dokja started negotiating. Bihyung was stunned. Nobody negotiated with Dokkaebis, especially not humans. Even more surprisingly, Dokja started talking about things he should never have known: the star stream, channel rankings, subscriber counts, the ambitions of streamers, the politics of the KBs. Things only insiders should understand. Bihyung immediately became suspicious. How did this human know any of that? Dokcha leaned forward. Then he made an offer. Not a sponsorship, not a constellation contract, a stream contract. He wanted to become Bihyung's exclusive incarnation, not because he needed power, because he needed a channel, a stage, an audience. If he couldn't have a constellation backing him, then he would make himself famous enough that the constellations couldn't ignore him. Bihyung thought he was insane. Honestly, he wasn't entirely wrong, but Dokcha understood something nobody else did. The Star Stream wasn't just a survival system, it was entertainment. And entertainment rewarded interesting stories. Kim Dokcha planned to become the most interesting story in existence. Byung refused. Dokcha pushed harder. Byung argued. Dokcha argued back. Eventually, the Dokkaebi realized something uncomfortable. The constellations were already watching Kim Dokcha. They were already interested. And if Dokcha actually succeeded, Byung's channel would explode in popularity. For a rookie Dokkaebi, that was irresistible. The negotiation continued. The arguments became more ridiculous. The demands became more outrageous. And somehow, Kim Dokcha won. Before finalizing the contract, Dokcha needed to survive. Fortunately, he already knew about a hidden scenario. A scenario hidden even from the most participants. A scenario involving the sea monster itself. The hidden scenario objective appeared: hunt the sea commander. Time limit 10 days. Failure, death. The real challenge had finally begun. Dokja immediately opened the Dokkaebi shop. He ignored all the flashy items, ignored the expensive equipment, ignored the legendary artifacts. Instead, he bought things that looked almost useless: mucus, thorns, strange monster materials, cheap junk. Even Bion couldn't understand what he was doing. The constellations were confused. Dokja smiled because he'd read the novel, and the novel had already given him the answer. The mucus protected him from the stomach acid. The thorns allowed him to anchor himself inside the monster. The materials gave him just enough resources to survive. For days, not hours, days, he endured hunger, pain, isolation, darkness. Every second inside that stomach felt endless. Meanwhile, the monster continued swimming through the ocean, completely unaware that its own passenger was slowly killing it from within. Doc just stabbed, again and again and again. Every movement sent pain through the giant creature. Eventually, the sea serpent became frantic. It twisted, roared, thrashed through the water. But it couldn't reach him. Its enemy was already inside, exactly where it couldn't fight back. Days passed. The hidden scenario continued. Most people would have gone insane. Most people would have given up. Dokcha endured. The fourth wall helped suppress the pain. His knowledge gave him direction. His determination kept him alive. And eventually, the sea monster died. The hidden scenario cleared. The sea commander was defeated. Rewards flooded in. Thousands of coins, rare achievements, constellation attention, everything Doctor wanted. But more importantly, proof. Proof that he wasn't just some lucky survivor. Proof that he could create outcomes even the original story never showed. Proof that he deserved a place beside Yoo Joonghyuk. Now Bihyung couldn't refuse him anymore. The contract was finalized. Not only did Dokja secure exclusive access to Bihyung's channel, he negotiated an absurdly favorable deal. Bihyung practically screamed. Dokja practically robbed him. And somehow both sides signed anyway. The partnership was official. 4 days after being swallowed, Kim Dokcha finally emerged from the monster's corpse. Fresh air hit his face. For the first time in what felt like forever, he could breathe normally. The ocean stretched around him, the sky looked beautiful, and the apocalypse immediately reminded him it wasn't finished. The entire city was covered in poisonous gas. Toxic fog filled the streets. Buildings were abandoned. Monsters roamed freely. Civilized society had completely collapsed. The world he once knew was gone. The real apocalypse had begun. Fortunately, Dokcha knew exactly what to do. He looted supplies, collected food, gathered equipment, prepared for the next scenario. While everyone else wandered blindly, he already knew where survival zones were located. He knew which stations mattered. He knew where people would gather. And most importantly, he knew where he needed to go next. Gyumho Station. While moving through the poison-filled city, he heard a voice. Someone was still alive. A young woman wearing a mask begged for help. Dokja hesitated. In the original story, she didn't matter. At least, not yet. But this wasn't the novel anymore. This was reality. And reality kept creating new variables. So he picked her up, carried her towards safety. Eventually, they reached Gyumho Station. The entrances were sealed. People inside refused to open the doors. Nobody trusted strangers anymore. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the scenarios. Not after the killings. Not after the monsters. To them, another survivor was just another threat. Dokcha wasn't interested in arguing. He grabbed the shutter and forced it open. The people inside immediately backed away because they realized something important. This wasn't an ordinary survivor. This was someone strong enough to survive outside. Someone who had crossed a poison city alone. Someone dangerous. As Kim Dokcha stepped into Gyumho Station, he felt something familiar. Not comfort, not relief, recognition. Because he already knew what this place would become. A station divided by fear, by power, by food, by desperation. A place where monsters weren't the greatest threat, people were. And waiting somewhere inside were the next pieces of the story, the people who would shape everything that come after. And Kim Dokcha, the only reader left alive? He had finally reached the next chapter. Now let's spill some extra tea on why this episode is good. This is the episode where Kim Dokcha truly stops being just a survivor and starts becoming a player. Up until now, he's mostly been using knowledge from the novel to react to events. Inside the sea serpent, that changes completely. He doesn't just survive a scenario, he identifies a hidden scenario, manipulates a Dokkaebi, secure a stream contract, and creates an outcome that never happened in the original story. This is the first time we see how different Kim Dokcha is from Yoo Jonghyuk. Jonghyuk solved problems with overwhelming strength. Dokja solves them with information. Jonghyuk throws people into impossible situations. Dokja figures out how to turn those impossibilities into opportunities. The deal with Young is especially important because it establishes one of the most unique relationships in the entire series. Most incarnations depend on constellations for power. Kim Dokcha decides to build his own path instead. That choice will have a massive consequences later. And finally, Gyumho Station marks the beginning of humanity's real struggle. The first scenario was just about survival. Gyumho Station is about society, food, power, leadership, manipulation, fear, and desperation are about to become just as dangerous as any monster. And trust me, the monsters waiting underground are only the beginning. See you in the next episode. That's all for today. Bye. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more manga, manhwa, and webtoon summaries. And I'll see you next time for more Otaku Tea Time.